and we looked at our certificate of occupancy, and I took that with a grain of salt. You may have a certificate of occupancy of 150, but you need to look at your footprint, your pews. How many can be seated in the pews as opposed to the entire facility, not counting the choir loft, not counting your music stand, but more so your pews. And 25%, that makes it a quarter. And if you have 100, then you're saying we can only have 25 people. Now, we know that we have a social distance guidelines, which says that we need to be 6 feet apart. Now, 6 feet apart means 6 feet to the front of you, 6 feet to the right and to the left of you, and 6 feet to the rear of you. So one person then would need 36 square feet, 6 times 6, of footprint to ensure that there is full social distancing. And now, so if you take 36 as your denominator and divide that by the total square footage, then you'll kind of get a more accurate indication of how many members you can have. But I even go further than that. Actually, go inside your church building. If you got benches, you may not be able to have the flexibility of moving things around, but you will put some markers down. Have someone sit and then do 6 feet to the right, 6 to the left, and those are spots where someone can sit. And then you make an accurate count. Then you will know how many single individuals you can fit in your church. Now, another factor to keep in mind is that they ask us to social distance if you're not from the same household. Now, we started out with families and we ran into a problem. We realized that not all family members are living in the same household. So we would have them sit together. But when we look at it, they're not in the same household. So we had to qualify and tweak. Every week we make some tweaks. So the same household, you may increase your capacity. A family of 4, they could sit contiguously together, and then you social distance from that family of 4. So if you use one person as your least common number, right, then you can see how you can increase your membership footprint within the sanctuary, making sure you are still complying with the CDC guidelines of having social distancing 6 feet apart. What else we're doing? We before we opened the sanctuary, we had to make sure that we had a staff that was trained, a staff that will be present and on time to be at the scanning desk, scanning table, scanning tent, scanning canopy. They wear a neon jacket, and we have at least 2. We have a third person, and these are the healthcare professionals within our church. And we call that the HAT, H-A-T, or HEAT. HAT stands for Healthcare Advisory Team. And they're the ones who really ensure that the executive board, myself, and the team, that we are fully abreast of what's happening. And then they have a team called HEAT. They turn the heat on, no point intended. And that's the Healthcare Extended Advisory Team. And these now are the frontliners. And they're the ones who are doing the screening. First thing they do, they take your temperature. If you got 100.4 degrees Fahrenheit, that's a fever. If you got 99 degree, that's a low-grade fever, and they may have to have a discussion with you. Below that, you will be admitted in, but not until Your hands are sanitized, so there's a sanitized station at front. Also, after we sanitize your hands, if you're not wearing a mask, we will offer you a mask. We'll also make sure the mask you're wearing is suitable. It's covering your nose and your mouth, and that is not worn, and that it's, at least a 2 or 3 ply. If not, we will provide you with a appropriate mask. Make sure you put your mask on. Then from there, you will ascend into the sanctuary and you will be guided. You'll be ushered to a seat. You are seated from, not from the back, but all the way to the front, and you fill the front pews all the way up to the back. Purpose for that is, if you're sitting in the back, everyone who passes or enter the sanctuary pass you. You want to minimize how many people you come in contact with. Along with the screening process, we do take your name. We don't record your temperature. We want to make sure we are following the HIPAA laws, that we are not recording any medical, but we take your name and we have your number. Just in case there is an outbreak, we have the contact information we can provide to the necessary officials, and we can do contact tracing. We also ensure that we do a video attendance, which means we take a snapshot of the church. So we have a photographic attendance, which gives us a very accurate location of where you were seated, and so we can follow up and make sure that everyone is contacted. So the flow, you come in, you get to the tent, your temperature is taken, your hands are sanitized, you're given a mask if you need one. Make sure the mask is properly fitted. Then from there, you're ushered to the appropriate seat. If you're with a family, you sit with your family. That comes from the same household. Now, the question asks, how do you control the flow? Our limit is 45. It's actually 50, but we leave 45. Why? Just in case there's a passerby, just in case visitors may walk in, and we want to make sure we have at least a 5-seat cushion to entertain any first-time guest. How we do this? It's like boarding a plane. We have a website, and on our app, you reserve your seat. Our app rolls out the services 2 weeks in advance, and you reserve your seat. I know some churches go by letters A, B, C, and so on. We tried that, but we found out there are some Sundays we have no members not because my last name is W, that means I will be in church. So we allow folks to get on the app and they register, and we'll know how many. Once we reach the max on the app, it then gives you the link for our Zoom services, where you can then continue with the service, but you will be in service virtual. Let me talk to the phase that we did, and then I'll open it back up to Pastor, because I have a few things here. Phase one, we took phase one for the preparation of the sanctuary. What I mean by that, we had a deep cleaning. We had a professional company that came in. We had some discussion. The members were saying, an executive pastor, the church has been closed for 100 and something days. There's no need, there's no COVID. But to ensure that, we wanted to err on the side of caution, we went out and got a company. They came in and they did a deep clean, sanitize, disinfect all the chairs, the doors, the pews. We also had an air conditioning firm that came in and upgraded our filters. So we had those filters that will help to retard the spread of the COVID in the atmosphere. So phase one, that's what we did for phase one. Also, besides preparing the sanctuary, we also got a stockpile of PPEs. We made sure we went out and we knocked on doors. We asked the members. We also asked our local councilman to give us masks, give us face shield, get some sanitizers, get some disinfectant, Lysol sprays, you name it. And we made sure we had a stockpile at least 3 months to give out to the public, to give to the members, and to serve the community. And that was in phase one. Also, in phase one, we prepared the church, making sure we got our Zoom account up. We were testing the sound, making sure we had ample cameras. We were training the young people who were going to be the ones in the front line to ensure that the church was still operating. And we also went out and purchased additional baptismal gear because we were believing God for the harvest. So we purchased robes, we purchased additional, baptismal gear, the whole gamut. Now, phase two, we have the church go into corporate fast to prepare the church spiritually and emotionally. Phase two, we started open the church softly with water baptism by families. What I mean, we weren't baptizing folks at random. We had a schedule. During the pandemic and the height of the pandemic, we had conference calls. And during those conference calls, a number of callers decided to surrender their hearts to Christ. And we had conference with them, and we began with them as the first phase of water baptism. Phase three, that's kind of where we are. We're not in phase four yet. We're doing blended service, blended virtual and in person. 45 is the max, and we're still doing our Zoom. We have two in-person services on Sunday, 8 o'clock and 11 o'clock. And our third service in the afternoon is on Zoom. Between services, we sanitize. We ensure that all the commonly touched areas are sanitized. We make sure that we have time between the service where the members who attended the first service are not coming in contact with the members of the second service. If they do, that's being done on the outside in the open air. The fourth phase is community outreach and servant evangelism. We're doing mostly social evangelism. We talk about social distancing. We're doing social discipling, where we're using, WhatsApp, Facebook, text, and inviting the community to Christ. And phase five will be our new normal. Full capacity, not sure, but COVID had moved the church online, and as a result of that, there's some things we had to also do. E-giving, a website, a Facebook page, a YouTube, a Twitter account. The kids are doing TikTok, you name it. All right, and having now a presence. And so these are some of the things we have done. I have some more, but let me turn back to Bishop. Bishop, I hope
you for some more, but I wanted to ask a few things, as
sure.
I have looked at various things going forward. I know quite a few people are doing some kind of plexiglass around the
Yeah.
pulpit or such like now. What's your take on that? And tell me why
All
or why
right.
not you think that's good. Mhm.
Okay, I'm glad you say that. I didn't include a picture in the slide. We did procure a plexiglass for our pulpit. Reason for that, dispensing the word with a mask, it's very muffled. And we have protocols for preaching. And I'll pull it up in a minute. The plexiglass allows the preacher to remove his or her mask, and at the same time, he or she is more than 6 feet away from the audience. But we want to make sure that the saliva doesn't get airborne, and the plexiglass acts as a barrier and will retard that from going all the way in the atmosphere. So I think it's a wise approach. Uh, some may say we're going a bit too far, but I disagree. I think every opportunity we get to show that we are being, if you want to say conservative, or we are being very cautious, I think we need to follow that. Now, here is the protocol, Bishop, that it's actually fresh. It's dated September 6th. New normal for preaching etiquette. Preachers should remain behind the pulpit to ensure social distancing. We're very charismatic and we like to, go down in the aisles and do all what we do. But we're asking our preacher now to stay behind the sacred desk and dispense the word. Also, number two, speakers should remain behind the pulpit to be protected by the plexiglass, since the face covering or mask is permitted to be removed during the dispensing of the word. The speaker should not lay hands on the members nor call the congregation to the altar. Oh God, that's going to get very controversial. Speakers should also speak within the allotted time. Our sermons now, we've reduced them to 30 minutes. We have abbreviated the service. It's not 2-3 hours anymore. We're not congregating together for no more than an hour and a half, hour and 45 minutes. And we ask that they comply to that. And it's our first time we put it in writing. And let's see what happens. Let's see what happens. But so far,
Yeah,
everyone has nodded okay.
yeah. Actually, my issue was with the plexiglass. I actually think it's not enough. I'm actually one of those who, unless it actually has sides and it actually
Yes.
goes all the way up and has its own exhaust system. Yeah, now, yeah, all right. Because, and I say that for this reason is, and then my
Okay,
next
go ahead.
question, you'll see where my next one is going. Because, I actually still, for the most part, maybe at the end, I'm preaching the mass because of those kind of reasons. Because the time when
Okay.
you're speaking forcefully, you really are getting out. There's live, there's stuff everywhere. And I'm telling you, even a plexiglass, in my opinion, may stop what is in front, but it doesn't stop what goes up. And then, of course, that now gets, and especially with my next question is, what have you done with your ventilation system, or what, the best practice with the
Yes, yes.
ventilation system? So
Yeah.
we'll go to
We,
that.
we got yeah, we got a special filter. I forgot the name of the grade, and
Mm-hmm.
put that inside the ventilation system. We
Mm-hmm.
we try to use the fans more.
Mm-hmm.
Open the windows, they say, but with the heat. But we use
Mm-hmm.
the air conditioning with that special filter, and
Yeah.
we
Because
reduce
my
the
question,
service to yeah.
sorry to cut you, but my question with
Sure.
the filters are, because there's a certain amount of air that is you're letting in. Have everybody been reworking their ventilation so that it's taking out the bad, all the air is exhausted and fresh air is
Yes.
coming in? Because I know it's not the
Right.
cheapest feat, but I
Right.
think this is my thinking that would be probably the best practice, would be if you can re-engineer your ventilation system where you're moving out old air and bringing in new. So hopefully anything that is in the air is going out.
You're right. But normally, if your system was set up properly, you should have
Hmm.
an outtake, right?
Yeah.
And your ear that's coming in. So that should be there. And most churches who do
It
central,
should be, because some people, though, for savings over the years, have systems that recirculate air.
oh,
So my only point is to make that point that people need to be aware of what is the specifics of your ventilation system.
well, that's a
Because
very good point.
if you're recirculating, because a lot of them are based on that fact, because that conserves a lot of energy. Whereby
Yes,
recirculate,
yes,
especially in the summertime, but you're recirculate, and in the winter when you're recirculating to save energy. So that's one of my pointers, what that I'm putting on my checklist of things that people need to know, the specifics of
yes.
your ventilation system.
Well,
And
well, that's a good
go ahead.
point. I'm going to actually talk to my AC guy to really
Mhm.
let me know if,
Yeah,
if we're actually pulling that air out. I know there's a
yeah,
duct, but as you said, are
yes.
we really, pulling that air outside the building and
Mhm.
have fresh air come in?
Yeah, I mean the filters do help, because you're
Yes,
putting in the filters, but to be 100%, that would be probably the best practice, is making sure
yes,
you're not recirculating the same air, because otherwise the plexiglass doesn't really help you. You see, because it
yes,
helps you. because whatever is going up in the atmosphere. Because my thing is that the best, because I was saying, my best case would be for a bubble around the pulpit, in a way. In a way, you'd have to build big enough so
Yes,
where
yes,
the person, because I mean, and I'm not calling any particular church's name, but I saw quite a few people coming from behind those plexiglasses. They're coming out to the side, they're
yes,
either
yes,
side, even though they're
yes,
under there, but I see them coming out to the
yes,
side and all that stuff.
yes.
And trust me, even one other thing is even with the choir singing, if you notice at our anniversary, even outside, I made my choir wear masks because
Yes.
it's still in the immediate atmosphere, and I think that's one of the big thing that I am really concerned about because I see a lot of people are getting together, especially in buildings, and then yes, they're 6 feet apart, and so they're
Yes.
thinking, yes, I can now sing without my mask because I'm 6 feet apart, but I'm inside a building, which is, I
Yes.
think all of those have to line up together and everything has to come in line and in order. So I think it's just great that we're having this discussion. And, I'm looking, nobody else has chimed in yet with any questions or any other
So
practices.
Bishop, I think what the church contends with is sounding good over the mic as
Mm-hmm.
opposed to being safe because
Yeah.
we do remove the mask when we are preaching, but you're saying
Yes.
the
Mm-hmm.
plexiglass, and that's why I did say the plexiglass is, let's say it's this wide, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And you are preaching, you want to stay put
Behind. Yes. Mm-hmm.
right behind. And
Mm-hmm.
every now and then you see the preacher goes to the side, to the right, or even trying to step down into the congregation.
Yes, I've
And
seen
you
it.
got
Yeah.
to kind of like slow down, So
Mm-hmm.
it's going to take, it's a
It's going to
paradigm
take time.
shift.
Yeah.
It's a,
I mean, and
yes,
I think it is a shift. And I think this is why I think the phase thing, like you're doing, is really the way to go. So you have to, make sure you follow some kind of structure, and I know
yes.
and actually the other reason why we're not actually back in the building yet is because we do share. And it's actually
Okay.
was going to become quite expensive because they want to do a deep clean in between. We have like our service is early and theirs is later. They want a deep clean in between,
Wow,
almost a deep
wow.
clean.
That'll
Yeah,
be expensive. Yeah,
which becomes very expensive. So we have actually opted not to go back in, and we're
yeah.
doing some other stuff in the meantime. Till
Right.
because my original thought is that in November we're going to be in, but we'll talk a little bit more. Let me not jump ahead. We're going to come back
Yes.
to you for a little bit,
Come
and then
back to
I'll
that. Okay.
and come
All
back
right.
to that part of the end part, thinking about realistically when we're going to really have a chance to be opened up. And we will touch a little bit on the flu and then the coming vaccine as well. But we're going to come back to you to continue any other structured talk that you had for us.
Yes. All right. So um, as we open, we looked at our core staff, right? And this core staff made up of musicians, a greeter, ushers, security, your praise and worship team, and the speaker, right? Whether the pastor designee. So that also takes into account of how many uh, members you would need every Sunday. Now, besides that, there are some other things that we contended with. For instance, now that the city has make it a requirement for everyone to wear a mask, we were concerned about the resistance of folks coming in not wanting to wear a mask. Now, that problem has been resolved, but the new problem we're discovering is wearing the masks properly. They're not covering the nose and the mouth. Sometimes it's a chin only, sometimes it's just a mouth, and they're still breathing in. So we have to do some education. What we did, we went on YouTube and find some videos, and we 2 3 minute clip videos, and educated the church, the value and the reason for wearing the mask properly. And so far, we do see folks in compliance. Now, let's talk about some best practices. Let's talk about best practices. Uh, do not pass offering plates, all right? Instead, you know, collect the tithes and offering in a central location. Encourage online giving. Encourage PayPal, whatever, you know, text to give, Cash App, whatever app you use, but encourage online giving. And also consider closing those common areas where people are likely to congregate inside the fellowship hall. That should be closed off. If you get a water cooler, that should be out of service. They should be drinking from closed cap bottles. Uh, any materials that will be distributed, we recommend that the usher no longer pass out hymnals, pass out tithes envelopes. If you do, how we do it at church, we do have a one, a UV one, which we pass along the envelopes. And while you're outside, we give you multiple envelopes. So this way you can tithe if you choose to do the tithe via in person. Also, instead of shaking hands, we may do an elbow bump, we may do an ear fist, and that's not being cold, that's not being callous, but that's just being wise and smart. We have also adjusted the seating to allow increase of social distancing. We also encourage family from the same household to sit together. We encourage everyone to wear a mask. I would say more than encourage. We have our heat team. Tier one are the frontliners. Tier two is our registered nurse, and what she does, she's like the state coming in. She's inspecting how we're doing, and by the end of the service on Monday, there's a report on my desk with recommendations, and she does a grading from 1 to 5 and grade each metric. And I will discuss the metric a little bit later in the program. And based upon that, then we'll have a meeting and we will target the areas for improvement. We want to make sure we're hitting 5. If there are 5 areas we're measuring, so 5 times 5 is 25, and we divide it by 5, we get a full 5. So we want to go for 5 at all times. Now, I want to talk about the physical distancing. If you could bring that chart up for me a minute. I mentioned 6 feet, 36 square feet per person. Now, the member will occupy the center. Now, looking at the seating arrangement, the red boxes are the seats that should be vacant. If there's no seat there, that's okay. But you should have a 6 feet configuration to the front, to the rear, to the right, and to the left. So each person needs a 36 square feet to ensure social distancing. And I say each person. We spoke about if you're from the same household, then that household will have a different configuration. They will sit together. The next slide, let me show you what it looks like. That's my present church. Before, we had rows going across. We had to identify how we would sit. Now, as you can see, it's like an airplane. And now the saints need to register their seats. The green boxes are the assigned seats for social distancing. So the front row, you will sit to the furthest left, you'll sit in the center, and then the furthest right. To the right, there are 2 rows. Not a large church. Also, because when our footprint is small, during the offering, we don't allow folks to walk with the offering, because once you start going into the aisles, you're no longer 6 feet apart. So as you can see, the green areas are areas where we would have someone sit. And if you count that, you can see it's a large number. You have more empty seats than occupied seats. And that has become a problem. Churches have overhead expense. And it has also caused some churches to actually fold, go under. And that's one of the reasons why I'm motivated for us to really see how we can help educate and other means of the church being solvent. Uh, let's go to the next slide real quick. Now, this one is showing, right, the family, if they are from the same household, that very top row, they will occupy those 8 seats. So a family of 8 would just take that front row. Notice now the next available seats 6 feet apart. So you will have some flexibility depending on registration. And that's why we do have them register so we know who is coming and we can quickly reconfigure the church. The next slide pretty much just shows you the measurements. All right, 6 feet, 6 feet, 6 feet. So we actually went in the church and we marked out 6 feet and ensured that we had everyone physical distancing. The next slide was now, and this was done on Zoom before we walked in. We showed the actual picture of the sanctuary and put markers where you would sit. So the usher, who is actually walking 6 feet ahead of you, is actually directing you where to sit. And we sit from the front, from the pulpit, coming all the way to the back. I know we have some folks who like to just sit where it's more convenient, but even so now more, we are encouraging everyone to really follow your ushers and sit at the designated seat. Let's go to the last slide. The new normal. Here is where we had some challenges, and we had to look at our processes and our practices and how we could make some change. One, the collection of tithes and offering. We still haven't really fine-tuned that yet. We today what we do is you receive an envelope at the screening desk coming in, or envelopes, how many, and during the announcement for the offering, you will bless the offering, and that's pretty much at the end of the service. And you leave your envelope on your seat. You leave your envelope on your seat. And after you're dismissed, then the usher will collect the offering, pick them up from the seats. All right, that's what we're doing now. We're still trying to tweak that. I'd love to hear other churches are doing. The altar call ministry. Pretty much the altar is where you are. We don't have folks walking to the front congregating. Again, we don't have a large sanctuary where we can have 6 feet apart. Again, we're not laying hands on you. I remind the saints, the Bible said the hand of God is not short that he can't touch you, nor is his ear stopped. So his hand is the hand that needs to touch you. The preaching, we just did the protocol. We're going to try to practice it to make sure we are standing behind the plexiglass. As Bishop mentioned, it should be a bubble. We're trying to work on that. Distribution of tithes envelope that we got, that's being done at the scanning time with the HV1, the UV1, I should say. Communion, let me pause there. We actually purchased the communion that has the wafer on top along with the wine beneath. And you also pick that up on the outside. So at the time for communion, we're not passing you a cup or a glass. Everything is done individually. You just peel and eat all of it, and then you have the wine. So we all also, I think we have really got the communion working. To be quite frank, we did this even while we were 100% virtual on Zoom. Our deacons, God bless them, and our ministers made deliveries, like a DoorDash kind of thing. And we delivered to the homes the emblems. And on first Sunday, or whatever Sunday we designated, we had a virtual communion. Sunday school, majority of that is on Zoom. A small population of our children are in, and while they're in, we used the Zoom breakout rooms. So the breakout rooms is how we facilitate that, and it has been really good in the fact that with Zoom we can use audio, video, and to be quite frank, the interest level has increased. Our youth fellowship, we normally meet in the sanctuary before the COVID, the pandemic, the quarantine, twice a month, first Fridays and second and third Fridays. During the COVID pandemic, we actually met virtually every Friday. And that was necessary. That was needed to keep in touch with our young people, to hear from them, to communicate, to understand the challenges they were going through. It was really a hard time emotionally for many of them. Some lost their loved ones, their grandparents, and because we were meeting weekly, we were able to really help to stem and to provide support. Now that we are in phase 3, we have done one Friday in person, and the next Friday, third Friday, virtual. The virtual helps us to tap into other churches, and it's working fine. So that's kind of what we have been doing here in the Bronx. What I didn't talk about is our e-giving, but I'll talk about that in a few moments. Pastor Bishop, back to you, sir.
Yeah, so that was very good. And I think one of the things you can do with the people who are physically there, we have a box, and the person, they pick up the envelope. We have only done outside, so it's a little different. We've not
Okay.
done inside.
Okay. I
But it
noticed
would be
that.
the
I
same
noticed.
thing. You would probably could
Yeah.
designate the box so when they actually come in, all right, and of course you're going to have
Yes.
one person taking the bags. You can clean, you can sanitize, and all that. The
Yes.
person who's then wear gloves, the person who's then taking care of it. So they could just drop it when they come in. If you give them the envelope, if they have a stack of envelopes, they could just drop
Okay.
that when they come in. And that's actually a good way to do that. You could put the orphan in as well. Just put everything you're putting in, and then you go from there. And
Ah.
then one person
Okay.
then who can sanitize the box and then distribute that.
Yes.
Now we did
Okay.
have one question online, and one person was
Sure.
considering when was the last time the CDC and government officials, gave any updates from the CDC. And as a matter of fact, I did pull it up today, and they're still just
Yes.
offering general recommendations. They're also making that you follow your state and your local government and following all of that. They did mention about scaling your operations. So, especially, for example, your higher risk people, you should probably still leave them at
Yes.
home.
Yes.
Those who are at high risk for any severe illness. And then for precautions, as some of the same thing that you were mentioning, they had to have to promote healthy hygiene practices. You want to make sure everybody's washing hands, and all this and stuff, and all of that. So there is ongoing updates from the CDC for the person who had the question online. Their second question was the question of why one is talking about how to stay. Nobody's talking about how to stay healthy, in terms of keeping the body in shape. And I think we have touched on that in other programs. We just had not focused on that today,
Yes.
but it's
Yes.
very important. And as I mentioned, and actually even my one weekly medical update I talk about specifically the need for physical, well-being, eating right, sleeping right, making sure your body is in shape. Because of course, if you have a healthier body, you're going to more likely to fight off any infections that you're going to face. So that is something we have touched on in other times for the person on the line. And they did have one more question. Why does Governor Comey say to blame him and not the pastor? So I'm going to ask you to answer that, Pastor. Why does Governor Comey say to blame him and not the pastor?
That's a good one. Well, I can't say why, but I think Governor Cuomo answered it. I mean, he made a blunt point to say that We want to make sure that you're not taking the blame for this. All right. So if your parishioners, your members are saying, Pastor, why? Then you can be transparent. You can evade any backlash by saying, put it at the feet of the governor. So I
Hmm.
think he was just helping us on the front lines with our members to say, as per the governor, right?
Hmm.
We are following this particular guidelines, and the
Hmm.
pastor can just hide behind that and don't have to defend any type of backlash from his members
Yeah.
or her
Well, we've
members.
kind of addressed that also on Turning Point over the weeks, because there's actually a school of Christians who would say, well, that we're being directed by the Lord, we're led by the Lord, and we're going to do what we think that is right to do. But I know we have brought this up before, that we should obey the rules of the land. I mean, and I know there's
Absolutely.
a lot of people who are out there saying, where's the church? Why is the church so quiet about this? But I think my idea of the church is not the building, and is not who is in the building, but is us.
Okay.
So I think we need to stay as vibrant as we can. And that's one of the reasons why we're even doing Turning Point. We're just trying to be out there, be vibrant. And here's where the church is happening, because the body of Christ is still together if we make it that way. And we can, accomplish a whole lot. We can help each other. And until we can get into a building fully, the work of God must go on. And I think you pointed out a couple of good pointers. Like, for example, our Bible study has probably been more, well attended, more people engaged, because
Yeah.
it's virtual. And as a matter of fact, we're probably going to keep our Bible study virtual when we get back in the building, because also, if somebody's running late coming home from work, they're home, and by the time they turn around to get out, they can't. So I think we have to rethink the new norm, and the new
Yes.
norm has
Yes.
to be a blend. Has to then going to be a blend of what we used to do. Of course, most all of us, I know if you were streaming and live, even our
Yes.
regular, before the pandemic. So now we
Yes.
just have to have done more. It's just have to be done from not in the edifice, but wherever the
Right.
Lord makes it possible. We've been in the park the last 2 weeks. We're going to be in a different
Yes.
park this week. And, we're going to, use it up as long as the temperature is over about 70, we can be still outside. And then when that transition comes, then we'll have to decide what we will do. But I think the important thing and I think the person on the line had a good point, healthy, keeping your body healthy, staying fit,
Yes. Yes.
exercising, eating right is very, very important, because that goes even against those people who they're so spiritual that they don't even want to do anything else. But it's the whole man. We have the whole man that we're dealing with. All right. So we
Totally.
got
Yes. Yes.
you have a few more points. You can go ahead and make
Yes.
them.
Yes. Yeah. I want to encourage all pastors, to register your church with a few of these agencies so you can receive the alerts. Uh, there are three major agencies. When I say, let me say categories: the federal agency, the state agency, and the city agency. The church should be plugged in. Plugged in from your email should be tied to that agency so you get the update. Under the federal level, you got the CDC, the Centers of Disease Control. You should get on that website and register. You got the WHO, the World Health Organization. And then you got FEMA. And then you got the White House. And then you also got HUD, Department of Housing and Urban Development. And then you got ACL, which is Administration of Community Living. These are some of the major uh, agencies that the churches should be plugged in to receive information. And then on the state level, New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, there's a coronavirus website. For New York, there's a disaster interfaith services, very critical. There's also a House of Worship Alert agency. And if there's any information that needs to get out quickly to the faith base, they're looking to you. I remember, Bishop, when the pandemic was very high, because my church was registered, I got a call from the governor's office to say, okay, Pastor Franklin, if we need to use your church and turn it into a COVID hospital, how many beds can we fit? And do we have an evacuation plan and so on and so forth? And also, do you have a bus? Do you have any church vehicle that we could borrow to move patients around? So, this opened my eyes to quite a number of things. So, the state agency, you also have the City of Aging, Office of Aging. Talk about our seniors. It's good to know there's so many grants, so many federal and city and state agency that provides funding to help the community. And as a church, we should also be a resource to agent for our members. And also your city agencies, coronavirus, city, the Department of Aging, and Department of Education. That's a critical one. In New York City, as you can see, still haven't gone back to full time or in-person classes. There's so many challenges again with this COVID-19. The students who have with special needs or mostly challenged need that one-to-one. They're tactile learners. They need that hands-on, and there goes the challenge. And also there is a high shortages of teachers. Teachers also are fearful. Teachers also have underlying issues. So it seems like, and I encourage Department of Education to step back and rethink education. Rethink education. Don't think within the box. Maybe there's some things we can do. Teachers from different parts of the world. You're taking a class in Spanish. Why don't I have a teacher from Spain? you know. So I don't want to digress there, but I just want to talk about the education piece because it impacts every family, and a lot of folks are doing homeschool or doing remote, and we need to provide ways of helping our children. All right, Pastor, back to you.
Yeah, yeah, and I think in general, and we're probably going to touch on a couple of those next week, but I'm going to just bring up a few pointers kind of to get people, ready for next week or which are down the
Yes,
road. But the good point you
yes,
make is I think the government and everybody has to start rethinking because also those people have to be home to homeschool their children. And then they, if they can't work from home, because also it's also
yes.
difficult to work from home and school them. So we have to see how we're going to support, and the church may have to step in at some times too. So I think we have to be open to see what is going on and what is the local, the state, and the federal government doing, for those people. But one of the things that I
Our
think is going to, go ahead.
Yeah, our buildings are vacant, right?
Yeah,
Our buildings
yeah,
are there. We got real estate. So
yeah,
we got to figure out how we can use that.
yeah.
Maybe we bring a few of the kids in so can relieve the parents to go to work
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
have the church set up as classrooms. There's so many things we got to think outside the box.
Yes, I think so. And I think some of those thinking we'll try to pick some brains over the coming weeks. Just before we
Yes.
wrap up today, I do want everybody to understand because, especially, one of the things that is probably going to help significantly with COVID, the pandemic, is a vaccine. However,
Huh.
I think everybody needs to be very knowledgeable about what is coming down the vaccines. I think, we're hearing some rumbling of them trying to push it out by a certain time. I think we all need to make sure it's safe. But at the same token, I don't want people to be afraid of vaccines. I want you to be afraid of the system and making sure you're watching the system to make sure it's safe. But if the vaccine is deemed safe, by the CDC and by the federal agencies, and it's gone through the rigors of all the phase of testing. I want to encourage everybody to consider making themselves available to take that vaccine once it's deemed safe, because that's the one thing that I think is going to stem the tide and may give us a great turnaround. Also, with that said, and I'm not going to start the discussion this week. I know everybody's
I
brain is
know, I know, I
jumping
know, I
as
know.
we
That's a
say
big
that,
discussion.
but
Once
but we
once
have
it's being said.
but we have to pick it up. But safety is really the clue, because the Lord has given us the knowledge to make sure things are safe. So we need to make sure they are. Number two, and with that said, also this flu season. And therefore,
Yes.
again, those who don't know, I'm a medical doctor, so of course I'm passionate about these issues. But it's flu season. The flu shots that they have available have all been tested and they're deemed safe. I would recommend this year, I know a lot of people have not taken flu shots for various reasons, that you take a flu shot. Reason B, the symptoms of the COVID and the flu are quite similar. There's going to be a lot of confusion and it's going to cause a lot of disarray and upset and a lot of people in the hospital and all that if you come down with the flu. So if we can prevent the flu, at least we will know that you don't have the flu, and that was a good chance because there's a percentage still. But then that would help us to do a lot more of what we need to do. Um, and I think there was a question. I don't think Albania. I'm not sure what the question is asking, but they were saying
Ye-
about taking all the necessary precautions. So that's really the key thing. And back
Yeah,
to
I saw.
my person questioning earlier too. The point is, the healthier you are, the better you're going to be able to fight off anything that comes. So I can't stress enough. As a matter of fact, I just to share with you all, I just start taking a really organic fruit and vegetable supplement. Not being is, even though I'm eating a lot of fruits and vegetables, listen, they're not ripe on the tree. They're not allowing these things to mature. So the things that you're buying don't even have what you need. I mean, I'm eating
Yeah.
them, but I think so. I think we have to start thinking about what are we going to do in general. But the flu shot, I'm just reminding everybody, is now available. You can just go to any pharmacy that carries it. Even if you can't get into your doctor's office, go to the pharmacy. As a matter of fact, I didn't even stock the flu shot this year because it's all the logistic. Saying everybody go to the pharmacies are big. They have all the money. They buy up the stock anyway. It's there. So if you need a flu shot, you just, and they did pass, I'm not sure if it's federal, if it's state, but they did pass a law that the pharmacists can even give children shots. Before it was just pharmacists could only do adults. But if you can look it up, but I think they've even passed that rule, but just to make sure everybody is protected, that the pharmacists can are now been certified to give children shots as well. All right, just especially the flu shot, and maybe just for the flu. So everybody out there, last word, Pastor.
Yes. My last word. y- Our census.
Good, good one.
I'm asking all pastors, please, please, please. I think we have 18 days or so
Yeah,
left, or
about
maybe less. All right. Encourage our members to take the census. It only takes 10 minutes. And to not take that 10 minutes means in the next 10 years, we'll be undercounted. Undercounted in so many ways, underrepresented as far as public officials in Washington, as far as funding for after school programs, funding for infrastructure, funding for education, funding for our civil servants. And it's critical. You don't have to be a citizen, you don't have to even be a legal resident. As long as you are in this country, as long as you're occupying a zip code and an address more than 6 months, you need to take the census. And my final word, if you have not voted since you have become a citizen or naturalized or born and you are at age 18, please go out there and vote. Vote this year as if your soul depends on it. And Bishop, I want to say again, thank you so much, sir, for the work you're doing in the community, for this medium. You are helping so many, and thank you for having me on this forum. My desire is to also help as many as I can. God bless you. God bless you. In
Amen.
Jesus'
Thank
name.
you. Thank you. And I think we are going to wrap for today, but be safe, everybody. Also, stay healthy. And again, I can also have to reiterate the necessity to vote. and also to get the census completed. All right. There is no questions on the census about even your legal status or anything like that. It's really just how many people are in the house. Bam. Tell them how many people are
Bam.
there. It's really the main thing. I mean, I did mine so long ago, I forgot. I did it online. You can even do it online, by the way. You
Like,
know,
Bishop,
you got to,
there was one new spot there. It says, "Are you Jamaican?"
yeah, yeah,
That was on the census. I'm like, wow, we
yeah.
made it.
Yeah, that's good. All right. So everybody, please, stay healthy and safe. Speak to
God bless you.
your pastors if they need any information. Direct them to us. We will give them the what necessary information that we have. If you have any concern, then as for everybody, I know some people particularly are really scared of going into buildings. Now, the question you need to ask is the one I brought up earlier. What is the ventilation system like and about? If that system is up to date, you have less worry. Now you still wear your mask, but then you can kind of go in, and then it doesn't even matter if they have a plexiglass, if they have that good ventilation system. But if they don't have that, they need a bubbled plexiglass system. All right. God bless you. Have a wonderful
Thank
day.
you.
Blessings, blessings to all. Blessings,
God
blessings.
bless you.
Turning Point family, what an awesome time we just had. To all our first time guests, we truly appreciate you for joining our live broadcast. We would like to hear from you, so please send us your comments, questions, or testimonies of how this program has impacted your life. Our email address is info@pflmi.org. Finally, if you feel led at any time to give to this ministry, please visit us at pflmi.org and click on the tab for donations. You can also give via Cash App at $PFLMIORG. We're looking forward to meeting with you live on next week's program. Have a blessed and prosperous weekend.